Welcome to Off Panel, Sketch.com's weekly podcast. This week, our guests are the team supreme behind Shudder at Image Comics. It's Joe Keatinge and Leila del Duca. Wait, did I pronounce that right, Leila?
Yes, you did. You got it correct.
Yes!
You're the first. That's the podcast we bit up. So they got it right off the bat.
Oh my God, I'm so proud of myself. The sad thing is I had actually written a note to myself to ask that beforehand, and I just abandoned all hope beforehand.
That's all right, because even when people ask ahead of time, they still mispronounce it sometimes, so you're doing fine.
Oh, that is amazing. That's always an important consideration for me, because I find that I mispronounce names all the time, except for when it matters, so I guess I'm very clutch with names.
Yes.
So the first question I want to ask is, this podcast is going to air on the day that the next issue, number 18, drops. So it's the fourth arc, and the new arc is starting. And the last arc was a hell of a thing. It was quite the doozy. And I'm not going to say that all the cards have been laid on the line, as I think there's still 3 siblings in the Christopher clan left to be revealed.
Yeah.
But lots of answers were delivered in a whole lot of unexpected ways. For you two, does having more puzzle pieces filled in make you feel like you're armed to really move forward with Kate? Like, is she like ready to take more control of her life? Because that's the vibe I was getting at the end of things.
Yeah, that's totally it. I mean, that's totally what that last little arc was about, was her, at the end of the first act, she finally was like, all right, I'm not going to take the shit anymore, but she still like has to get the full semblance of what the picture is and know where to go from there. So while her confidence was built, her ability to kind of act on it wasn't, if that makes sense. Totally. And now she very much is at that point where it's time to, take the reins and go with it. And that's essentially kind of what this next arc is about. All Roads is like these 5, I don't want to say done-in-one stories, but they kind of are, that all build. They're very different from any other issues we've done, which is kind of what we like to do. And that, they can be read singularly, but they all build up to this larger whole. And while they build up, they also, kind of all cards on a table, but, it's almost, or maybe all puzzle pieces on the table, all the pieces on the table. Now this is us slowly putting them together. Mm-hmm. And so by the end of these 5 issues, you have the full picture, and then it's okay, then Kate acts on that,
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to add that it's been really cool relearning, or not relearning, but learning who Kate is now. She's had a very atypical character arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool going from her trying to figure out what's going on to her now knowing more than the readers know, and we're getting to learn her and who she is post memory loss, and learning all these things, getting her memory back and all that stuff. And this next arc is really, really cool. You get to get to know some more backstory with her history between some characters, mm-hmm. And getting deeper into other characters whose backstories we haven't gotten to explore yet.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's really interesting, and I'm sure this was probably deliberate, but looking at issue 13, the first one that started the last arc, and then looking at 17, it really seems like the way you made her look, Leila, is when she first, we first meet her in Venice, she's she looks really unsure of herself, and she looks kind of downtrodden because, her memory's gone and everything. But in 17, when she says, we're going to end it, I mean, she's powerful and badass, and she's got this new haircut. Was that kind of I don't know, I guess visual empowerment, something you were deliberately going for?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually Joe's idea. He wanted her to look like her ideal self. She now knows who she is, the path she wants to take, and she's feeling like an utter badass. So Joe was make her just look super confident with more modern haircut. And I think someone online was looks like she looks like she's out of a page of a badass craft. Never mind. I don't know. It was she's the badass. Oh yeah, she looks like she's out of the page of the badass handbook.
Nice.
And I thought that was pretty accurate. Yeah. So I don't know. She's super confident now, and she's got a mix between her old and new style back. And yeah, that's definitely what we were going for.
Yeah. Well, it works out really well, and I have to admit, like I'm at least like 20% more intimidated by her with like the shaved side of her head. I'm like,
Nice.
I can't pull off that look. I really wish I could. It's a pretty awesome look. Anybody who can, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome.
I can't either, so that's fair enough.
So you're not going to cut your hair like that before Emerald City Comic Con? Because I would love to
No.
see you with that.
All right, you know what? Maybe for you.
We'll both do it, and we'll meet up. It'll be an amazing meetup.
I can't do it though.
Why can't you can do it?
I can't because, well, I can, but I get not accused, but like everyone's like, Kate looks so much like you. Did you do that? And I was like, no, look at the noses. The noses, they're different. And so I feel like if I cut my hair like Kate, that'd be going a little too far.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a legit argument. Joe and I have no argument, so we pretty much have to cut our hair like that. So I really want to ask, like, and this is going to sound like incendiary. I'm not meaning it to, but sometimes when I read Shudder, it's like, sometimes you're like, oh man, family is good. And other times you're like, family sucks. It's like, it's horrible. But one thing I think is really interesting about the book is there's a kind of like an undercurrent of family is what you make it, because you can make a really interesting, I think you can make a pretty strong argument that Kate's family is really like Elaine and Harrington. And like,
bingo,
yeah, like, not that I necessarily wouldn't want a skeleton man to be my skeleton butler man to be my like father figure, but he's like much more of a father than her dad ever really was. And would you say that's a fair statement?
I think it's dead on. I mean, it was one of the things that we talked about with the initial inception of the book. I mean, when I first came up with it in 2010, I did want to make a big theme of it to be not so much the families you're born, well, how family transitions as you get older, and like how there's the family you're born into and then the families that you build over time. And like, I have a friend who she's like, I don't think of her as anything but my sister, even though we're not blood related at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's unique to her. But yeah, and so I want to kind of, that was part of one of the things of many things I wanted to explore about family. And there's all these different perspectives on it, like also how, when you're a kid, you think your parents, for good or bad, are these like gods or these bigger than life figures. And then as you get older, in your adolescence, you're like, oh, they're a bunch of assholes. They're these huge monsters. And then when you're older, you're like, oh no, like everyone on Earth, including my parents and myself, are all these people everyone's kind of fucked up in their own way, and they're trying to figure shit out. And, and fucked up doesn't mean a bad thing necessarily. I just mean like everyone's got their shit, like everyone's got their anxieties and the stuff that like, may like take them down or whatever. But like, and your parents are just have gone through the same stuff you've gone through. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's
totally.
like, it's like, okay, well, Kate, really looked up to her dad and was a mentor figure. And then, she finds out, oh, he's kind of a dickbag. And one of the things that you see as this is all these literary terms I'm using. As time goes on, you're like, oh, wait, he's just, well, actually, especially in All Roads, you kind of like, it doesn't excuse any of his behaviors at all. Quite the opposite, actually. But you do see, like, I don't know, the different side of it, as opposed to like, oh, he's ultra great or super bad or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, like really deep down, it's like I feel like every person is kind of a mix between like that childlike vision and your adult vision, where it's like, yeah, they're kind of a dick, but they also can be good. Well, I mean, some people, there's some total assholes out there, but I mean, that definitely comes true in the story as you read it.
Yeah, people change and grow up over time, like, look, there's times in my life where I look back and I was like, fuck, I was a huge dick. Like, what's wrong with me? Why did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone has it. Everyone has sides of themselves they're not super into, but that's the thing. It's like every single person on Earth has this,
Mm-hmm.
and, there's no reason to, I don't know, like, yeah, there are people who are just pure assholes. Don't get me wrong. They're out there. But, I just kind of understanding and really learning more that, yeah, people are just, everyone's got their thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be anxiety or depression or it can be all sorts of stuff, but everyone's got it. And, yeah, but if you do a comic solely, I was going to say, if you do a comic solely about that, it gets a little boring. So that's why we throw like ghost ninjas and shit in there. So it's like.
One of the things I like about Joe's writing on Shudder is that he does explore how there's so many different facets to everyone, and like if a character is a dick in like in the first arc, they can totally be redeemed by the third arc, and like everyone is changing and makes mistakes and grows from it or doesn't grow from it. And I don't know, I really like that about Joe's writing for sure.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Well, I actually just reread all 5 issues in a row the other night, just because I was like, maybe I'll do a little bit of research for this podcast. I'm going to do 2016, do some New Year's resolutions. I should read the comics before I talk to people. I'm just kidding. I read it regularly, but I could be wrong about this, but I kind of felt like the most recent arc. What did you guys have? What was the name for the most recent arc?
God, the most recent arc, Koi Vadis.
Koi Vadis?
Yeah.
All right, then.
Yeah.
That a little less hard to remember than All Roads, but I like it. But I feel like the most recent arc was maybe the most experimental yet with its storytelling. I mean, there was like in issue 14, there was like a 2-page, like you were talking about Ghost Ninjas. There was like, well, I guess they're not the Ghost Ninjas, but like they were fighting Prospero's like foot soldiers, and there's like a kind of, it's like a manga-ish 2-page like interlude, and then there was the whole fourth wall breaking segment is Nero brought Kate up to speed basically. And I could be wrong, but it kind of felt like there were more 2-page spreads than before. Do you feel like as you've moved along and got more experience working together that you're kind of, I don't want to say taking more risks, but you're finding new ways to tell a story that keeps things more interesting to you guys?
I think that's accurate. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I mean, over the course of working together for 2 years, I think, or more, you've definitely written a lot of things that I love doing. And I love doing double-page spreads and splash pages. And that I love experimenting with new art styles that I haven't really drawn before, and you always like have a really great sense of what's appropriate to use in the storyline. Like doing like a Japanese manga fight style for the Prospero monk battle interlude was really spot on and awesome. And using the Milton Glaser-esque type of style for like for the splash page of Kate about to start her drug trip, like that was super.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Joe definitely knows I really dig doing that kind of stuff, so he writes that stuff in.
I really liked it when Kate and the leopard were escaping in Venice, and like the whole map of them like jumping across the rooftops. That was such an amazing 2-page spread.
Family circus, man.
Yeah, it was totally awesome. I was actually going to mention that because there's the circle down the bottom right corner.
Yeah,
actually in the top left corner, but
yeah.
Initially, when he said it's going to be family circus style, I'm like, oh, one of my least favorite comics. No, but then the more he explained it, the more I was like, yeah, this is great. This is a great.
That's hilarious. Well, so like I want to ask you guys about how you work together. Before you jump into an arc and an issue, do you guys kind of talk out the story a bit before you jump into it?
Sometimes it's mostly the stylistic stuff that we'll talk through. Like I'll be like, hey, I want to do a thing that's a weird double-page spread, or something if I'm like really like, I don't know, like thinking I'm pushing it or something.
Like a family circus spread?
Yeah, exactly. Like a family circus. No, that's totally a good example. Like a family circus spread. Then I'll like, hey, what about this? Would you bet for that? Because I don't want to write it and then be like, oh, no, I don't want to fucking draw that. Get out of here. I don't want to draw like a Broomhilda style, whatever. I don't know. But your story stuff, I kind of used to, and now I don't know, I guess I could have subconsciously got the impression just like reading it. Although, I did just tell her some future stuff the other day. That was pretty cool. That was good to get your reaction on that.
Yeah. I feel like Joe, I mean, you totally talked to me about what's upcoming with the vague plot. Like
yeah.
A vague idea of it. And then you'll also come to me for, hey, I think you're going to hate what I'm going to do to this character.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that, like, I'm going to write it first, but you can totally tell me if it's off character, which is something that actually happened to Alarm Cat in Quo Vadis, or however you pronounce it. Sorry.
Yeah, I was.
But yeah, you totally changed the end of it because I thought it was a little off character. And I think
even when I sent it, I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to try it, and I was like, no, and it wouldn't work. So,
yeah.
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but it's also another reason I really dig working with you is because you totally listen to my input on the script, and even if you disagree, then you don't change it. It's fine. It's just nice to know that I've been heard, and I don't really get that with all of the writers I've worked with. More so now, just because I don't know, maybe I have more choices with who I work with, but working with Joe on Shudder was the first time where I felt like my input was truly valued.
Like you guys are a team.
Yeah, like we're a team.
I agree.
I wanted to ask. Oh, I just have to mention because I actually had Jason Latour on my podcast last,
Dude.
and we talked about Southern Bastards, and we talked about Coach Boss. I don't know if you guys read that comic.
Oh, I love Southern Bastards.
And I told him I was actually like the only time in the last couple of years in comics that I've actually been angry about a character change was them making me like kind of empathize with Coach Boss.
Yeah, it was genius.
It was genius. But I wanted to say that like you guys upset me because I was so heavily invested in Alarm Cat being adorable, and then he became Cassius, and you guys ruined me because now he's like this warlord badass, and I'm like, no, what is happening? Everything's changing.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we told the story a few times, but I guess we get more into it now. But like originally, I was going to kill him off, and yeah, way back. And then Leila was like, "No, you got to keep him. He's really, it's cute, whatever." And I was like, fine." And then I was talking to somebody about the book, and they were like, "Oh man, you got to merchandise the hell out of that cat." And I was like, "That's your advice? Like, fucking what? Are you serious? Like, that's what you?" And I was just like, "Fuck you, man." So I was like,
"I'm gonna make this.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, "We're gonna make this the most uncommercial, uncute character ever." So that talking about being a dick. That is kind of a dickish part of my personality. I'm like, I'm gonna do this and mess with that guy. But it also made sense for the story. Like, don't get me wrong. I was just like, I don't know. Again, how like perception changes over time and how you grow and how you change could be also for the negative. And someone like him could do something really bad even though it has good intentions. So it was like it's not just totally random.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool.
It does break my heart where Alarm Cat or Cassius has come to, but it also was really appropriate for the story and its themes, and I like that it breaks my heart in that way.
Yeah.
And every time I read a new script, I'm like, oh, my heart, because of the new things, the new tortures that he puts that cat through.
Yeah, like I guess we could say it now because we're talking spoilers and stuff. But the thing that we changed was I had an aversion where at the end of 16,
mm-hmm.
he had killed a car and then he put a car's head on his own head on his body.
Oh God. I guess he needed a new head.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, that'd be perfect. And you could like spike it on that thing.
But I'm like, no.
But also just like, I wrote it. I was like, this makes no sense. Like, why would we do this? It's not interesting if he just kills him. Like, it should be ambiguous of what happened.
Yeah.
So I was just like, this is just me. And like, you always need to write for yourself and the artist. And, you don't want to like think about what the perception is, but you have to be true to your characters too.
Right.
And it was just one of those things where I'm like, Joe, you're just being a dumbass. Like, you're just doing this because you think it's funny to have this severed lion head on this robot cat body. And it's like, and I don't know. There's still a chance we may do that. I don't know. We'll see.
So potential spoilers for the future.
Yeah.
I'm actually like when I look at the head, I'm always just like every time I see Alarm Cat's head now, I get a little sad. Although I think it would have been worse if there was like a lion, like a young lion's head on there instead.
I was thinking too, it could like rot over time. So like,
oh God,
the story gets. So by the end of it, it's just like mostly like mush. I don't know.
How do you like my head?
That's so funny because like the first thing that I thought of when you wrote it that way were the logistics of like the size placement, because Alarm Cat is like this like less than 2 heads tall, or maybe one, or maybe he is 2 heads tall. Mm-hmm. So when I was wants me to draw this, I was like, how is this small-bodied cat gonna wear a severed lion head?
That'd be huge balance issues.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of where my mind was at too when I read that.
I also, not to focus on Alarm or Cassius too much, but I do really love it that you kind of worked in like a miniature version of like Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey's relationship by like Chris calling him Catsius, like in like a pun, and then like Cassius immediately responding with like no. And I was like, it totally reminds me of like Kieran Gillen dropping a pun, and then Jamie McKelvey being like, "What are you doing?"
Also, Brandon Graham's been my best friend for like 10 years, so that's also indicative of our relationship.
It sounds like kind of, once you actually dig into an issue, you kind of put your heads down and do your own thing. Do you guys still communicate at all during that phase? Like, I mean, it sounds like you kind of, I don't know. In the scripts, it sounds like you kind of put like a lot of the stylistic things, like the manga break, and then the like the kind of peyote scene. Like you kind of have that baked into the script more or less, right, Joe?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was like I didn't stylistically have in the script, or it could be wrong. And stuff gets adjusted too. Like we have a thing in the next issue that was like it's kind of a riff on Roy Lichtenstein's panel blowups, and originally was like want to make a line work rather look just like his stuff, and it just wasn't working. And so like that kind of changed when she was drawing it. But yeah, everything else I kind of always have in there because it's not like random. Like there's even if it's fucking dumb and it's just like whatever. There's some sort of logic in my head about why we're doing this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the black and white manga scene back when in the 70s, like when kung fu movies or not so much but like kung fu movies would come over to the US and there'd be like super violent scenes. They would like go to black and white sometimes. And then like for instance, if you've seen Kill Bill, that's why that scene is in black and white. It's the same kind of thing. And I was like, how would you do that in comics? Because like I always get bothered, and I think we've talked about this before, where it's like when people are like, I want to make comics more cinematic, and that just means like more boring. And I was like, no, like your comics can do all this really cool shit. You can just do it through comics. You don't try to make a movie through comics. But I was like, what's the comics version of this, you know? And I was like, oh, because I want to introduce the Leopard as like this totally badass, even though he's kind of like polite and everything about it. And I was like, oh, let's make it a manga scene, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it worked because he had, you turned the page and it's just that, you know? Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty. But yeah. Anyway, to answer your question, all the stuff is pretty much in there.
Yeah, and as for communication after he's given me the script and stuff, yeah, we definitely communicate, and me especially when I'm feeling insecure about something I've drawn or like the new style that's introduced. I'm like not 100% certain it's on point, so I'll definitely like send some pages here and there. Prematurely to be like, hey, is this good enough? Like, is this what you were thinking of? Because I don't know. Yeah, so like there's definitely like, communication in between there. But yeah, for the most part, we kind of like there's less communication after the script has been discussed and the layout has been okayed.
Yeah, I suppose it probably would you'd be pretty shocked, Joe, if you just wrote in like normal fight scene and Leila comes back with like a 2-page manga black and white interlude, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. Again, like, I mean, I don't know, that would be kind of cool, but like it always, I know there's a million comics with quote normal fight scenes, so it's like, well, how do we
make it stand out?
Make it stand out and just make it different. I don't know. I just like, the comics I love reading, like talking about Southern Bastards earlier. It's like I read a lot of crime stuff, crime comics, crime books, whatever. Like I've never read something like this before, you know? Or like with the Fade Out, like I've never read, something quite like this before. And so it's like with Shudder, it's like, okay, well, how do we do this differently? That's like, what haven't I kind of seen before? And obviously seen many a manga fight scene, but implemented like this in a Western comic, I haven't really seen too much of. Yeah. So.
I do think it's important, especially for creator-owned books, but just in comics today, like there's just so many comics that you got to do something to stand out. And I'm not saying that you guys are doing these things strictly to stand out, but it is cool. Like I like that you guys have, you don't follow. I mean, obviously you stick to the script, but you don't stick to one. Like there's not one direction all the time. You guys mix things up and find cool ways to tell a story. And then you guys have like all the back matter stuff. I really love the back matter stuff between like your movies, music, TV, and all that. And then the fact you guys include, comics made by other people. I think all of that stuff really adds a lot of value to the overall Shudder experience.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, like, so how did those types of things come together? Like, was that something you guys just knew right from the bat? You're like, we want to do this, and was that just because you wanted to do it, or is it because you were trying to find a value add?
No, it was I never thought of a value add. I was like, I mean, not to be like, but like I always think of it like what serves the story the most. But when I started writing issue 1, I had like I don't say I froze up, but I had this thing of like, oh my god, we can do anything. Yeah. Like because it had been a while since I'd worked on something creator owned. And it was the first like really big creator-owned series I'd done, and I was just like, oh man, this is a weird feeling. And I think the first 2 issues on my end kind of flounder a little bit because of that. I think I was trying to put in too much, and then when it got to issue 3, I was like, all right, settle down, do anything. And then I was like, well, I want to have this assassin in there, but I don't want to be some random assassin dude.
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't want to dedicate a whole issue to this guy's random life. Like, how do I distill the most amount of information in the least amount of pages? And then I was also like, well, what would be kind of cool as opposed to just being some like badass looking dude with like a patch on his eye? I was like, well, what if it looks like Richard Scarry stuff? And I was like, all right. That's how my brain works. And then I was like, well, comics wise, I'm really fascinated with 16 panel grids. And I was like, oh, that would be kind of a cool, because I was like, oh, well, what you do is, then you have that, you have the 2 pages, you learn everything about the guy, and then the impact of the explosion is massive because you have a double page spread. And it was like cool effect. And that's when I was like, okay, well, we'll try more stuff out. And then like when it came to Harrington's origin, I was like really into.
God, I love that. It was so good.
Yeah, I was really into like Victorian children's books, and like. And I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to do something like this. And then it just snowballed from there. It was just like, every issue became a challenge. And it was like, well, it's almost like, I don't want to say like a chess game, but it was one thing where like, I introduced a 16 panel grid thing and she came back with it. And it was awesome. So I was like, okay, how do we top that? How do you top that? How do you top that? And then, I don't know, but again, I always have to serve the story. Like if it doesn't serve the story, I don't do it, or serve the story and the characters. But I don't know. Plus, it's just cool to see, like, I wonder what she would do with a manga style. What does that look like? I guess we'll find out,
For you, Leila, does that make, I don't know, kind of like I don't want to be like, oh, it just sounds cool. But I mean, like, does that keep your, I don't know, it sounds like that would add a lot of challenge, but in an exciting way for you as an artist.
Yeah, it absolutely does. From day one, Shudder was like this immense challenge, but only in the funnest way imaginable. Because for one, Joe would write so many cool, challenging things for me, but they were so fun to work through because they were such cool imagery. And like, I love drawing that kind of stuff, and overcoming those problems. So the whole time I draw Shudder, I'm trying to like prove to myself that I can be a badass while also impressing the hell out of Joe and trying to keep it fresh. So yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff, and I love pushing myself in directions where I don't typically think I would go in, which is exactly what Shudder made me do. Like, I don't think I would have developed the main style I use without this book, and I also don't think I would have ever thought to experiment using line work and color or like washes like I do in some cases with Shudder either. And that's super fulfilling.
Do you feel like, I mean, because I know this is like your biggest project to date. Actually, it might even be yours, Joe. I don't know.
I would say it's pretty accurate, yeah.
But I mean, especially for you, Leila, because I know this is like like definitely the biggest. But do you feel like this has been, like, do you feel like you've learned a lot through this experience?
Oh my God, yes. Well, for one, the artistic challenges that I was just talking about have been like, I've grown so much artistically through this project. And then secondly, Joe's been like the greatest mentor I could ever possibly hope to have. And he's taught me like the inside outs of the business, and he's gotten me in touch with so many comics people, including the Image crew. And just going to conventions with him and tabling with him, I've learned, like, I feel like I've already had really great customer service experience from working like hotel and coffee shop jobs before I was an artist. But yeah, he's been a really great example of how to conduct oneself at a convention and how to interact with fans and how to give everyone like the proper amount of attention and like giving things away for free sometimes. And so, yeah, I've just all across the board, I've learned so much from this project. So it means a lot more to me than just a job, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome.
I have to ask though, I mean, I was thinking about the back matter. You guys had Tiger Lawyer in there. There's like Leonis, which is like Cat City, literally. And then you got like Alarm Cat. Have you ever thought about telling Joe what's with the cats?
Oh my God. It's so funny you mentioned that because when he wrote Eklund, the Jackal Samurai assassin, into the book, he initially wrote her as I think a tiger. Was it a tiger, Joe?
I don't remember anymore.
Okay, well, it was another cat of some sort. And
isn't she? She's like a hyena, isn't she? What is she?
She's technically a jackal, but she could be like a jackal, a fox, or a hyena. She's, I guess, up to interpretation for whatever. But yeah, when he wrote her as a cat, I was like, Joe, I think people are gonna think you're obsessed with the cats. So he's like, oh yeah, you can change it if you want. And so I made what I think is a jackal, but you guys can think she's whatever you want. I'm fine with that.
That's awesome. So Joe, are you obsessed with cats?
I mean, it's funny, not really, but I not like in general, but I think in comics a little bit. Like my favorite Superman comic, well, one of them anyway, is the one where he like turns into a lion. Yeah. And I just think I just love that idea of Superman's just like, oh shit, I've got a lion head. Like what the? and then I love they never got into it, but like if I ever wrote another Superman thing, I would love to do an issue where like he's like trying to be Clark Kent and like the lion head hasn't gone away. And he's just like, oh, hello, everyone. They're like, Clark, do you have a lion head? Like, let's go. And then stuff like I really love Taki Tani from Captain Marvel Adventures. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. And then it was funny because I was doing the Superman thing. That was a lot of fun. I worked with his editor, Alex Anton, who's a badass. I love that guy. Mm-hmm. It was like this Adventure Superman thing. And it was funny because like kind of jumps all over time periods. And like, so there's a flashback and you saw like, because Red Kryptonite was kind of like involved. Mm-hmm. And then, so like had a flashback where he had a lion head. And then towards the end of it takes place like at the end of all time. And there's all these different Supermen. And so I had like, there's like, when Superman was like the fat Superman or Superman was like Ant Superman. And of course, I had one of the main ones be a lion head. He's like, dude, you can't have the lion guy all over the place. And it's shit. Oh, or Commandy's actually a big one. Because like I think the DNA of Shudder comes from in comics anyway. I mean, a lot of outside stuff too. But in comics, it's like Kirby's Commandy, Tintin, mm-hmm. and Captain Marvel, CC Beck Captain Marvel Adventures. And so it's like there's just lion people all over those comics. So I don't know. It's like I think it makes sense.
I can tell you, I would definitely read that Superman comic of him just being Clark Kent with a lion head. That sounds amazing.
That's why I know DC will never hire me to do another Superman thing because like I just couldn't be like the angry teenager Superman. I couldn't take it seriously. Just be like, all right, shut up, man. Like whatever. Like well, you were cooler when you had an ant head or like Mixapitalik was turning shit into chocolate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. No. I'm totally a supporter of Ant Head and all of that stuff. That sounds amazing. Yeah. So you mentioned this already. You talked about the Richard Scarry thing, and I have to admit, not that everything has been downhill since then, but that opening sequence was like my favorite part of the entire series, and for some reason, I have this like deep love affair for that worm. And anyways, I thought it was amazing, but it's a really like. Most comics, as you guys know, don't really use the inside front cover like that, though. Mm. Why did you guys decide to start using that? I mean, you guys have used it the entire time, but I just think it makes like I immediately jump into the story, and it's always such like it seems like there's always great parts there.
Well, that's why. Because like it was a while ago, I was talking to Brandon again about just I don't know, we were just like because I had started Glory and he had started Prophet, and we were just talking about stuff, and we got in this conversation about. And I think it was because we were reading Nowhere Men, and we were getting a conversation about how, like, I don't think enough, like, it was very obvious that Stevenson and Nate were using every part of the pig, so to speak. Like, mm-hmm. like they didn't conform to this general, like, oh, there's a front cover, then there's an ad or whatever on the inside front cover, and then whatever. Like, they were like, you can use a comic as a unit, and it's like you can do whatever you want. It's malleable. At Image, like, it's like, you start Sandman Overture #1, you open it, and there's an ad for combos on the inside front cover. It's like, okay, that kind of takes you out of the artistic world of Jake Williams' beautiful artwork. And then, so we were talking about it for a long time, and it was kind of like, yeah, we should start using, like, we use the inside front cover, and then we put stuff on the back, and it was just like, why doesn't everyone do this? It's like, you can do whatever you want. And then my argument for it was, I like the idea that, like, you start it and it's just comics. Like, mm-hmm. there's no, like, again, there's no combos ad, there's nothing to take you out of it. Like, it's just... Yeah, right away it's comics, and mm-hmm. you're in this world, and there's nothing to distract you from it, And then again, it was stuff like you said, like you open it, and you're like, you don't know what to expect. You might open it, and it's like a little Nemo riff, or you might open it, and it's a children's story riff, or you might open it, and a number of things. So yeah, that really came from that, and just like, and I'm doing it on all my stuff right now. I've done it on Ringside. Mm-hmm. I'm basically doing it on anything that's that Image because I just liked it. I don't know. I just like the tool of it. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely adds like some. It definitely feels unique. I mean, even though that, like, I guess other books are doing it, but it's just, it stands out given the fact that the vast majority of comics don't do it. But also, it's just like I said, it just like really hits you right when it happens. Especially apparently if it involves a worm in a skeleton outfit, because I'm all about that.
Well, I think a lot of people reference that one. I think part of it is like they hadn't seen anything like that before. You know, it was just like,
well, and you had the
didn't
16
expect
panel
it.
grid too.
Yeah.
I do have an important question though, and you guys may not have figured out this part, but how did that worm shoot that missile?
Whatever. Fucking cares.
Oh, come on. The people have questions.
Let me look at it. I don't know. Yeah, it's been a while.
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying I haven't gone back and reread these issues in a really long time. Oh, it shows it right there, dude. It's the second to last thing.
Damn it.
He braces himself against it and then uses both of his hands and he pulls the trigger. Come on.
His hands, he's a worm.
Whatever, man. He could do it. He's strong. Come on.
I love it. Sorry, I had to ask that question.
No, it's okay, David, because that's also one of the cases in the script where my logic brain was like trying to figure out how to make that feasible.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. I'm like, could he brace himself with like his tail? And like, he doesn't have opposable thumbs really. So I'll just like, and then like the same thing happened with Alarm Cat when he was wielding a what's it called? The chops down trees saw.
Axe?
Oh, chainsaw.
Oh, chainsaw.
Yeah, chainsaw. How the hell does he use a chainsaw? Because he really doesn't have any opposable thumbs. So, I think that question is super valid.
I love how Leila and I are apparently like team logic, and you're just like, fuck it, I do what I want.
Well, kind of. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to deny that, you know. There has to be some sort of logic to it, but at a certain point, I'm just like, all right, whatever.
I know, I'm just kidding. I love that scene, so apparently I thought way too much about it.
No, I just always find it so funny because we're like, oh, they're in a dreamscape, and people are like, all right, that's fine, but like, how does that worm hold the gun? Like,
Come
really?
on, man.
Yeah. There's fucking ghost ninjas. You're like worried about this fucking one?
I accept everything besides apparently worms shooting missiles.
No, I appreciate it. I do like it though. I think that's funny.
It's awesome. So I wanted to ask, like the other two members of your guys' team, Owen. Now I'm probably going to mispronounce this. Gianni?
That's about right.
Okay. And John Workman, easy to pronounce. I love it. They're both obviously fantastic. John came in a little later, but they're both, clearly parts of the team now. Did they get worked into the overall discussions, or are they kind of busy enough where they kind of just do their part and, that's that?
I'd say a little closer to that. I mean, they would, like, we run stuff by them, all the time. Like, they always just color notes for Owen, and then sometimes I'll like, ask John, like, oh, we're kind of going for this kind of style or whatever. But I don't know. Like, I just kind of like, especially John, I just feel like, this guy's been doing it for longer than I've been alive. It's like, why am I going to tell him, like, oh, this is how it should look?
Yeah. Like, what can you tell John Workman about lettering, I guess?
Yeah. So.
But for you, Leila, do you work with Owen at all about like talking about coloring notes or anything like that? Or is it just kind of him doing his thing?
Yeah, I definitely give them color notes when I think it's important. But like Joe said, they both really know what they're doing. And Owen is like a wizard with colors. And so I don't really feel like I have to tell him what to do. He's just going to be a badass at it no matter what. But if it's something that pertains to like the style that he needs to color it in, like if it's a flashback, that needs to be specified because he has two different styles for present time and like flashback styles.
Oh, yeah.
And if I like really am set on Elaine's dress being a certain color, I'll tell him that. But for the most part, I let him do whatever he wants to because every time he sends back colors, my jaw drops. And I don't know how he's still doing that after like 3 arcs. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I do have to say, like you mentioned Elaine, and I just have to again compliment you. I did when I first interviewed you after the second issue came out. I still think Elaine has the best hair in comics. Her hair is incredible.
Thank you. I try.
So I want to ask about the cover design, and I know you have like Tim Leong, who is my hero because Super Graphic is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And Addison Duke work on the book, but how did the original like front cover design and back cover design come together? Because I love it. It stands out so much. I love the framing.
So was Tim. I mean, I've known Tim for a bazillion years, just through comics or whatever. And then there was we were hanging out at Image Expo 2013 or so. I don't remember. It was one
2014.
of the ones. Was it 2014?
The one that I was at, or with you and Tim?
No, it was the year before. I don't think I was a guest then.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was just hanging out, and yeah, I was just hanging out. So anyway, so we were getting a conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, I love to design more comic book covers." And I was like, "Dude, I would work with you on anything in a split second."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then so that was the year before, and then when it was time for Shutter, I was like, "Dude, I got this book. I want to have a distinct look. I want to be like." And I gave him all these examples of like travel magazines and travel logs and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'll make it look like this. And then he fired back with that. It was perfect. And then he got hired by Entertainment Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he didn't finish the back cover, but I think Monica Garcia at the time helped, she's no longer with Image, but she was a production artist at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of finished it off there. And then now, then Addison's taken over since. But yeah, just again, it was one of those things where it's like, every you can do, like I was talking about the conversation I had with Brandon earlier. It's like you can do anything with this. Like, why make it look like every other comic?
Right.
Like I also, as you know, and I've talked about a little bit on the last time I was here, it was like I work retail now, and a big part of it has been like the difference that really good logo and cover design makes, man.
Yeah.
There's just so many comics being printed. You have to be methodical about this kind of stuff, or you won't stand out. You'll just get lost on the shelf.
It was interesting. So when I went down, my friend and I went down to visit Floating World Comics when I was down in Portland last. And when my friend who doesn't read comics was walking around there, it was amazing to see what he gravitated towards. Like he was totally gravitating towards the stuff like, Shutter or like Paper Girls or the books that really kind of like look different.
Yeah.
And like also like he actually was grabbing a lot of the books that like Floating World themselves were publishing, like the Object 10 book and stuff like that. And it was just because like as a complete outsider to comics, like you look at a lot of the standard covers, or I hate to say standard covers, but the typical comic covers, they all kind of just feel the same.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And it's also, like some people know I do sales. I work on sales and ordering with Floating World, and that's what we're kind of talking about. And so we had really long conversations last year. We kind of redid the whole store in terms of like the design and just also layout. And my whole thing was always like the first question I asked Jason, the thing that when we came in on board was, I want to figure out. There's a person, she reads about comics on, I don't know, IO9 or wherever she's reading about comics. She's walking by and she's at a comic store. She doesn't know anything about comics. How do you make a place? And she's like, let's just say she's shy. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. How do you create an environment that she's welcome in, she's comfortable in, and she can like navigate towards if she on her own if she wants, or if any of us can help her with it. And so it's interesting to hear about your friend who's not really in comics and what he gravitated towards, because Saga obviously is. I mean, I think it's okay for me to say this. The top 4 sellers we had overall last year by both dollars and units were the Saga trades, and like it was like number 1 and then like 5, 3, and 2 or whatever. But anyway, and I that's a book that we put out face out because I think it's inviting. I think it looks cool. I think it's welcoming, if that makes sense. I feel
totally.
like people have the idea of comic book as genre, which doesn't really reflect reality. And any books that go through that effort, we really make the effort to showcase that and utilize it, because I think Saga sells for a lot of reasons, but I do think that is one of the big ones.
Yeah, I think that it looks more like what people expect a book to look like rather than what a comic book looks like. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. Shutter single sales do okay, not great, but okay. But we sell a crap ton of those trades, and I think that's part of it. Is that like Image and us, we really take the time to think about like what is inviting to a reader. You know what I mean? And like, I can hand these to some friend of my sister's, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is a book about this adventure, and like, does it look crazy? Or like, it looks cool? Like I can get into this." Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm kind of oversimplifying things here, but yeah, no, that's always very methodical on anything I do, whether it's Shutter or Ringside and it's important to Leila too, and important to Image, and I just think there's a big, you can look at the books published by Image or published by other people who are like look kind of half-assy, and like those ones don't sell. Yeah. I don't know. So,
I actually just have to point out, like my friend went back to Floating World without me, and he ended up picking up 3 books. I mean, I didn't give him any advice, and he came back with Paul Pope's 100%. Nice. And Space Riders, that Black Mask book.
Oh yeah, great book. Yeah.
And then he also got the Object 10 book, and it was interesting because like those are the books he gravitated towards as like, because they all of them don't really look like a typical comic, and beyond that, he like one of the things that he likes is he likes heavy metal, and not like the music, but like heavy metal,
right?
And
right.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why Space Riders stood out to him. But it is just always interesting. Like I always find it to be really fascinating to see what like people who aren't exposed to comics, what they gravitate towards in terms of looks. And that's one of the reasons why I think Shudder stands out, is because it has a very classic framing to the cover that presents Leila's art in a really fantastic way.
Thank you. Yeah, Joe actually was like, yeah, I want it to look more like a book than a comic book. Like it looks more like an adventure novel than anything. And
right.
And I was totally down for that. I thought it was great. And then Tim did a great job. And then as for the back cover illustrations, I think that was another thing we wanted to have that was specific to the single issues that made it a little bit more special, which is like a framed picture that is illustrating a character's backstory in a way, so that it gives a little bit more dimension to a storyline that we haven't really expanded on completely yet. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I like that has that there, and it also has the story so far beneath it. It's kind of like both looking forward and backward in an interesting way. I think you guys got a letter from somebody who was like, "You guys should explain what happened last," and you're like, "It's on the back cover."
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, turn the comic book over.
I wanted to ask you one thing, like, kind of more like a comic market question, but I'm working on an article about, it seems like the comic industry is increasingly like fixated on recency lately. And I'm curious, like you said that like single issues are okay, but like book sales are better for you. Do you feel like, that you're starting up your 4th arc? Do you feel like you still pick up new readers from like trade sales or anything like that? Or do you feel like it's kind of you're where you're at now?
I think we're kind of where we're at with the singles, but I think we do pick up trade readers all the time. But I don't know. We were talking the other night at a meeting, and I was like, it's weird because I was working on orders for March shipping titles, and I was going through it, and I was like, oh my god, Shudder's an old comic. Like, there's seriously, dude. Like, there's not a lot of comics that make it to 18 anymore, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I do think that there's a I don't know that I completely have understood it or wrapped my head around it, but I do think there's a thing with a modern audience where it's like, what's the next thing? What's the new thing? Like, let's go. Like, there's so much out there. Like, there's not. I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about Cerebus, and I was like, Cerebus sucks until like the 23rd, 24th issue. It doesn't suck, but it's like it's not very good.
It's not Cerebus.
It's not Cerebus, and then like around issue 25, it gets amazing, and then it gets crazy later. But it's amazing for a good chunk of time there. And I was like, we're not even at that point. You know what I mean, in terms of numbering. And I was like, that's a crazy, insane thing. But I think that kind of goes into the permanence of it. I do think we get a lot of, okay, well, I've read Saga, and I've read this, and I've read that. And I was like, what else do you have to read? And I was like, oh, Shudder. It's like, it's really good. It's a good follow-up to that kind of Wicked. Like, if you like Wicked and Divine, you like Saga, you'll like this, But yeah, I do think it's a weird thing. And I don't know. I don't think I like it, but it's like, oh, it's where the market's at. So it's like, it's what you got to do, you got to adjust. But I'm just like, it seems insane to me. But then again, we were talking about her last time. I think that you have an audience who's starting to get older, who's reading Reagan and Telgemeier stuff, and they're used to, like, you read a book and then the story's over, or like, or there's another one a few months later or a year later, which I'm fine with. Like, look, I'm not begrudging to any sort of audience. I mean, anyone wants to read Shudder any way they want, they should do it. That's awesome, And again, I'm very thankful for our readership in the trades, but it's definitely something I've noticed as a retailer, especially, where I'm just like, oh shit, like there's been a massive change between how we perceive comics. And I'm still wrapping my head around it, but it's been a conversation we've been having both in store and, with the comics. Like, I don't think it's a big secret. I think it's kind of leaked out, but, DC's relaunching all their books in June. And it's like, oh, so they're going to be the number one again, in terms of just like at issue number. And I'm like, Jesus, like, do we don't? This is the marketing tool we have. We're just going to keep relaunching the same garbage over and over and over again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying those books are garbage. I kind of mean more so like the technique of the selling. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's going to be some awesome comics in that lineup, but I'm just like, I don't know. It just blows me away. And as a, you know, I don't like it as a someone who's selling comics to people, because I think more often than not, those are jumping off points. Like, you always see, I think we've talked about this before, I think over email, but like, you see the big number 1 jump. I won't deny that. And then it goes down number 2. And by number 3, it's at the same level it was before the relaunch. And then by number 4 or 5, it's already down again. Right. And I think you can only play that trick so many times. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, we're seeing soft return. We saw a very soft return on the DCU. That was not a successful initiative for us. And All New, All Different has been pretty good. Let me put it this way: the books that do well have done exceptional. Mm-hmm. The books that haven't, like, just fall flat. Nobody wants them. And I just think it's just too much of, like, again, person comes in, like, one of our perennial books now is, and a book I personally love, and I actually think that Leila turned me on to it, was Ms. Marvel. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. It's awesome, and I love selling that comic. Mm-hmm. But I had a conversation with someone the other day who's relatively new to comics, who came in, I think it was through Captain Marvel, then through Ms. Marvel, I don't remember, but Ms. Marvel was like their book. And she was like, I don't, like, what? Like, so there's a new Ms. Marvel? What does this mean? And
why is there new number 1?
Yeah, why is there number 1? It's like, do I have this issue already? And luckily, you know, we really pride ourselves at Floating World about, like, interacting with people and making sure, like, you know, everyone's, you know, being taken care of. But I think a lot of places that she would go be confused and be like, this is not worth the trouble. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's a million other things you can be doing, you know, whether it's on your, you know, seeing movies or, I don't know, some app. I don't sound like I'm 85 years old. Whatever the kids are doing, I don't know.
They're just Snapchatting each other.
Snapchatting, IMing.
We're going to be so fraudulent when we show up to Emerald City Comic Con with our cool kids' hair, and we're like, hey, let's Snapchat, guys.
I'm wearing a polo shirt and a sweater. I'm 85 at heart. I've been at 85 at heart for a really long time. But seriously, like, I do think it's a problem. And again, it boggles my mind that, again, we're on issue 18 and, like, oh, that's old hat. You know, it's just like, what, really? Like,
you guys are elder statesmen.
Oh, I mean, in terms of we are, which is insane, you know?
My favorite thing to say is Chew is actually, I think, the 3rd or 4th highest numbered comic out of anything in, like, the top 300 for the Diamond charts when it comes out.
So Spawn is number 1, right?
Yeah, I think Spawn, and then, like, Walking Dead. No, Walking Dead and then Spawn.
No, it'd be Spawn, Usagi Yojimbo, Savage Dragon. Oh, if top 100, I mean, that's fair. Well, if we're talking about the top 300, yeah. No, I see what you're saying. And then, then Walking Dead, which is like, I don't know. And I get things change, and I love change, and I love things that but I do think that this is kind of a massive tangent, which, as you know, from last time I was here,
I'm sure Leila is used to it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I do think I do find it a little troubling, honestly.
Well, I mean, it's interesting for you guys because you guys are telling a long form story, and it's like when everything favors recency, and you guys are trying to tell this. I mean, I think Shudder is like one of the best comics. It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks, man.
Aw, thank you.
And it's just like, I don't know. It is interesting because it just seems like it's like the long form storytelling is almost like favoring trades and collections, and like you were saying, like Raina's style stories that like are just being told in books.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a deep tangent. Leila, I want to ask you about one thing involving your work experience. You work at Periscope.
Yes, I do.
Which I think is like, I don't know, for some reason I've always had this like odd fascination with it. I just think it's like got to be like the coolest place. Do you feel like you know, I mean, you work near like all kinds of like, you work with like Jeff Parker and Steve Lieber, who are like seasoned veterans, and you got like super badasses like Ben Dewey and like I don't know, any number of other people. Like, do you find that to be an inspiring like situation for you to work as an artist?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the coolest thing. It was like, I think I was telling someone the other day that it's like art school but way cooler because we're all doing what we love for a living, and the technology works way better.
Yeah,
like the printers and computers. But yeah, it's amazing because of the wide range of people that go through there. Like, there's anyone from independent, self-published cartoonists to people like Steve Lieber and Jeff Parker, who are seasoned veterans. And then there's like the newer, fresher people like Ben Dewey, who's only been in it professionally for a few years too, like me. And it's great to get like reference photos of people whenever I want to, or like go to Steve for anatomy help with figures, and then Ben Dewey for like I don't know, just anything. And it's super inspiring. And I have a huge competitive side where I really want to, if I see someone next to me, I'm like, and I'm jealous of their work, then it just inspires me to work that much harder at my own craft. And so it's great to be working right next to Ben Dewey because his stuff is incredible. And I'm like, well, he's doing this great work. Like, I want to do the best work of my life too, and like approach it with the same kind of integrity every day that he does. Yeah, so that's awesome. And it's just nice to get out of the house and see people. I think I'm like 50% introvert, extrovert. And so if I work from home all the time, I get really depressed. So it's nice to go in and see friendly faces, even if like there's a wide range of crazy people talking like anything between cats to like dick pics to all that stuff. And it's just, it's crazy and amazing, and I love it there.
Did you say dick pics?
Yes. Well,
This
like,
is completely changing everything I think about Periscope Studio.
I was going to say, I went on a tangent, but holy moly.
well, it's appropriate. We have Erica Moen in the studio, and she does
Joy's sex toy.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of talk about sex sometimes, just because it comes up in conversation about like I don't know. I don't even know how to talk about it, but it can get really ridiculous and probably inappropriate if you have small children in the room. So, which we don't. So
I hope those aren't the reference photos you were talking about.
They're not. Don't worry.
Okay, that's good. I'm just trying to imagine you guys all taking reference photos of each other. Like, it's probably all super casual, but I'm guessing if somebody walked in, they were just like, "What is happening here?"
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's people pointing guns at each other, fake ones, of course.
Yeah.
And then like swords and spears and that kind of stuff, and like wacky poses that are over exaggerated because it's like great to have that kind of stuff in comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be hilarious. I feel like there's a lot of if we weren't super secure in who we were, I think they could be blackmail material, but I think we're used to being so ridiculous that we don't really care at this point.
Okay, I got 2 more questions for you guys before the 5-question finish, but I have to ask, and Joe's gonna hate me for this question because it's another realistic, like, logic question. But I was reading it the other day, and I was thinking about the world, because it's more or less Shudder's world is more or less the real world, but there are some variations, like Leonis. And I was thinking, I was like, is this like Sicily, or is it like Sardinia or something? And like, I was curious, do you guys actually have like some sort of ideas to where elements like that fit into the world?
Well, I was being a little facetious earlier. Like, I actually do overthink this stuff. I mean, maybe in a different capacity than what Leila was talking about earlier. But, like, one of the things about All Roads is that a lot of the stuff that seemed totally random is like, oh, no, that's all part of this thing. Mm-hmm. And, like, Leonis doesn't exist. Like, there's no equivalent for it because, like, Sicily and Malta and everything would be on the western side, right? I'm doing some logic in my head. And like, and Leonis is between Italy and Croatia, so it's like there's not really a thing there in the real world. But I do consider like, so that we took some freedoms there. But Leonis has a place in things, and I think we hinted at that pretty hard at the end of 17, and you get way more of it by the end of the series. There will be some things, like I don't think I'm ever going to get around to the origin of the Ghost Ninjas, but I have an idea.
And it sounds like you kind of like you do, like you're kind of like thinking about those things, but there's some elements where you don't think you'll necessarily be able to get to just because where the story is going and the amount of time you have for it. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, sometimes there's stuff I've cut out for sure. Like I've cut out entire characters that I just didn't have a place for it. I had a whole bunch more stuff I wanted to do with the Dreamscape that just didn't fit. I've actually thought I could do a whole like prequel, not like ongoing series, but like maxi series about Leonis, but I don't think I'll ever will. Maybe, who knows? But I don't know. Again, it's like you want to have it make you do want to have this internal logic and have it make sense enough that people like don't get totally tuned out of it.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, you can do whatever you want in comics. Like, why? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I guess don't let. I mean, what's that quote where it's like, I'm gonna butcher it. But like, logic is logic is good or interesting is better. I forget. Something like that. But anyway, like, you know, like, you don't want to make it boring because there's no Leonis. Can't do that.
Yeah. We can't just make up an island.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can. Fuck
Yeah, you can. Why not?
Make it up.
All right, so you know, the last question is like the new arc is starting, air quotes, today. You guys have already kind of talked about where, you know, kind of roughly where it's going, but, you know, for the readers, what can we expect from All Roads, and both visually and for, like, you know, what do you guys hope to accomplish in this next arc?
Everything coming together by the end of it, in terms of like getting the full, like, nobody knew what was going on. Then Kate knew what was going on. Now it's like by the end of All Roads, I want the reader to finally have a full view of what the situation is, what Prospero's doing, what's the deal with that weird cathedral thing they've got, what Kate is planning on doing, what it means when she says she's actually going to end the world. Like, you don't entirely know that until like the very last issue of All Roads, but as it goes on, and there's stuff like, there's an issue, I think it's the second issue of the arc, where you see backstories on Callian, Chris Jr., and the Leopard. Mm-hmm. And like, there's a ton of stuff, especially in the Leopard part, where like if you pay attention to the background, you're like, oh, that's, I mean, I'll say it like, oh, that involves the Ghost Ninjas, and that's what they're a part of. Or like, oh, this is where this dude came from, or whatever. Like, oh, you can like place it together. Mm-hmm. And like, because I don't know, I don't like fiction or really anything that tells me everything. I like as a reader myself to like not have everything filled in. Mm-hmm. So, but I want enough filled in where I feel. One example I always bring up is Blade Runner, where, you know, you don't see the gunships off the shoulder of Orion. Or the original Alien, where at the time, until Prometheus, you didn't know what the space jockey was, which was like this cool thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And it created this interaction because you had your imagination had to like fill it in. And, you know, as many a prequel has shown over the last 30 years, it's better to just let it be, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a big thing is to get the scope of where we're going, and frankly, laid out for the remainder of the series. You know, I've always said that Shudder's coming to an end. We're not there just yet, but, you know, it's from here on out, like, I guess I could say we're starting to wrap stiff shit up, you know, after all Roads, which is, you know, what I always intended. I never wanted it to go on forever. And like we said earlier, not a lot of things do anymore. It always is. I mean, I wrote the ending when I wrote the first issue. So that's kind of all. Yeah, I wrote the last 3 pages of the entire series when I wrote issue 1.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no. So it was always like, when am I going to get there? And yeah. So that's all Roads. Anyway, Leila.
Visually, we can look forward to 3. Well, yeah, each issue introduces a distinct new style, which has been really cool. And the issue 20 has this really awesome style. I won't give it away, but it's the style.
Whatever. Who cares?
One of okay, cool. It's a Lynn Claire style, which is really cool because it's I'm trying to emulate Hergé's style a little bit.
Oh wow!
It's so nice because like Joe's been talking about writing that in for a while. Mm-hmm. Because Tintin is one of the biggest inspirations for this book. Is that correct, Joe?
It's my life in general, but yeah, sure.
I could tell because he's been like. God, oh my God! I completely spaced your Skype avatar.
Oh, Captain Haddock. Yeah,
Captain Haddock. He's been staring at me in the face the entire time we've been talking.
But yeah, it's nice to do that style. Brings me back to the conversations we had at the beginning of this book, and yeah, but it's been really fun to do those styles. So visually, we can look forward to that and Owen's wizardry and. John Workman's amazing lettering skills as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to end with 5 questions, Shudder style, because you guys do one of my favorite things out of any back matter in any comic, because you guys do like you share what you've been into lately. So I'm gonna cheat your guys' letters column and ask you guys some questions. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. So first off, what movie or movies have you been really digging on lately?
Man, I've been I usually go. I used to go to the movie theaters like twice a week, and now it's just I've been so busy. I've been out of it lately. What if I saw Force Awakens, which I was fine with, I guess. Hateful Eight, I was majorly disappointed with, but I thought it looked cool. Actually, the best theater experience I've had in the last several months was I was down in L.A. and I went to the New Beverly Theater, which Tarantino now owns, and it was a double feature of assassin movies starring John Cassavetes, which was like
wow.
But it was awesome because like they started off like the whole entire thing is like made for this double feature. Like all the commercials they showed beforehand were all original reels, and they're all related. Like there was like one that was like a bug killer ad, and then there was one they showed the God, what's the name of it? The duck season, rabbit season.
Oh.
Chuck Jones. I can't remember the name of it. Someone else in this room, I could totally ask if she would tell me, but I don't want to sideline the podcast for that. But basically, they showed that on original reel, and then they showed a bunch of trailers that were all like either assassin related or John Cassavetes related, and then these two movies back to back, and it was like, damn, that is such a great theater experience. Like, I'll never forget that.
That's awesome.
So that was actually my favorite movie thing in a really long time. And of course, in my head, I'm like, okay, cool. How do you relate that back to comics? Like, how do you? And I think we do a pretty good job of that, where it's like, I know we have film reps for Shudder, but I'm like, good luck,
Yeah.
Like, this is really like, how do you create unique experience for that? And that's one thing I thought was successful about Hateful Eight. Was I went, the local theater in town, the Hollywood Theater, has a 70 millimeter projector, and so I got to go, and it was like, had the overture. They gave you a little lobby book. They gave you this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then Marconi soundtrack at 70 millimeter sounded amazing. But besides, I'm seeing what am I seeing tonight? The new Charlie Kaufman movie.
Oh yeah, Anomalisa.
Yeah. I imagine that will be good.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
But I don't know. But anyway, I mean, honestly, right now, my major viewing obsession is just going through Twin Peaks again.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been pretty great.
So, Leila, well, we already got movie and TV from Joe. So, what's your movie and TV of choice lately?
Well, the top 3 movies I've seen lately and I actually need your guys' help for this. What is that movie about where
Star Wars: The Force Awakens is what it.
Nailed it.
Well, that's one of them. I loved the new Star Wars. I thought it was so fun. And then the other movie that I watched recently that I loved was Tank Girl for the first time. That was super great.
Yeah.
And the third one was, it was an older horror movie, but then they remade it in the 70s, and it was about the aliens that like came down to Earth and they
Body Snatchers.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my God.
I love that movie so
Look
much.
at that. I used to work in a video store. Quite professional when it comes to what's that one movie with that guy?
I was actually just talking about that movie this week. They're actually the original, and that used to scare the hell out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So next question. Read any good books lately? Have you?
Oh yeah.
What you got?
I read a lot. Like that's like my main.
I was gathering that because you were like dropping a lot of like Victorian children's books. I'm like, really? I did not see that coming.
I'm obsessed with reading. I think it's really important, and like I want to raise my children with that as like the main tenement of like their thing is like just read a lot. I don't care what you read, just read just anything.
Mm-hmm.
When for Christmas I got this. They're doing. Like I think it's gonna be like 12 or 17 volumes of like every Ernest Hemingway letter ever.
Wow.
And so I got the first 3 volumes for Christmas, and the first volume's a little weird because the first few letters are like, I'm Hemingway, I'm 9 years old, and I'm writing my dad about ducks. It's kind of cool to be like, oh shit, this guy. I mean, he's kind of a piece of shit in some ways, but he was a really good writer. And it's interesting to see him go from like this 9-year-old who's like super into ducks to like this guy who was a nurse in World War I and seen all these horrific things, and then like the transition of like again ducks till like I saw my friend die, you know. And it's been this interesting process of just again seeing someone's life evolve.
That's
I do think it's a little like I am really into his work. I made problems with him, but and this is I do have to admit I really love these books, but they are kind of like overkill in a way where I'm like, all right, the Scribner collected Hemingway letters may have been enough. Like this is insane, but I'm still gonna buy all of them. And then I'm really into this writer. From a similar era, but I never really read his stuff, named Ford Maddox Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this amazing, I think it's like 4-novel series about World War One, and I'm going through that. And then, I'm reading Winston Churchill's books about World War II, which are like, it's interesting seeing all this stuff in the time period, because that one, like the first couple chapters, it was the guy who's gone through 2 world wars, and he's like, can we fucking just knock it off? And it's weird, and it's interesting to see correlations between the stuff he's talking about and the world at the time leading up to World War II, because I'm reading the story in the first book, and then now, and like modern times, like, oh, we're idiots. We didn't learn anything from history. We're doing all the same shit all over again.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is I've been collecting the Signet James Bond, Ian Fleming novels, like the paperbacks, and those have been interesting. Those have been a lot of fun. So,
what about you, Leila?
I haven't had too much time for reading lately since I've been marathoning How I Met Your Mother, which is super. I love that show.
I do too. Funny, yeah.
But when I have read, it's been East of West. I got to not catch up with it, but I read the first hardbound version with like a crap load in there. It was amazing.
Oh, nice.
I've been reading a lot of like raw food recipes lately.
All right.
I'm into making raw food desserts.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then like comics here and there, but like nothing that has stood out as like, oh man, yeah, that. Oh, Island, actually. Island.
Oh, yes.
I was reading that. Oh yeah, and I guess Paper Girls, but I haven't really actually taken the effort to pick up a lot of stuff and read it because I feel like I haven't had much time because of How I Met Your Mother.
I do have to give you a recommendation. You had the Bone Clocks in there a couple issues ago.
Yeah.
And he made David Mitchell, the guy who wrote that, did a somewhat sequel to it called Slade House.
Oh, really?
Which is really, really good. And I just finished reading it. It's kind of a creepy horror type book that all takes place in like one house effectively. And cool. It's really interesting. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I would love to read it. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, he's really good. Joe, so Leila touched on comics. What comics have you been enjoying?
Well, gotta doubly endorse Island. I think it's I don't know. I don't think I realized until recently. I mean, I always thought it was going to be a really important book, but I think it's going to be more important 5 years from now, in the sense of like, I think you're going to look back and you'll be like, oh, that was the first time Gale was published, or Amy Claire, or all these people. You know,
I love Gail Bertrand. That guy's amazing.
Yeah, astonishing. And I just think, actually, my favorite single story of 2015 was Emma Rios' ID. I think that was astonishing, and just the stuff she pulled off both writing and art was amazing. My favorite ongoing series of last year was The Fade Out. My favorite comic book overall, and I make the distinction between Fade Out being an ongoing series and Hellboy in Hell.
Oh yeah,
being like, because it came out like twice or whatever. Right. But to me, it's like whatever. I don't care. Mike Mignola just do it. Although he announced he's going to end it, so I'm like, God damn it, I respect it. Gosh, I'm trying to think of what we're really Last Man. I really like a lot. First Second it was really good. I'm really excited. I haven't read it yet, obviously, but I'm really excited for Raina Telgemeyer's Ghosts. One of the things when I came on the shop was I felt we were kind of soft on sales on her, and I think I just kind of underrepresented her. And my appreciation for her, not just as like a cartoonist and someone who's helping to sell us units, but just as my appreciation for her as a cartoonist has also increased a lot recently. Yeah, I'm really excited for her work. So yeah, no, that was. I feel like I'm missing something pretty big, but I don't know. Ton of Image stuff. Ms. Marvel, Secret Wars. I loved.
Secret Wars was awesome.
I love Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
And it's hard to fuck up Doctor Doom for me. Yeah. And Ribic and Hickman fucking knocked it out of the park. It was just a really good Doctor Doom story.
Yeah, it really was.
I don't know. So I don't know. Whatever.
You like? Yeah, man. I support all of that. Although I do have to say, I gotta give Mignola a lot of credit. It's kind of cool that he's just like, I'm gonna take off a year and paint.
No, I love him. He's like my hero right now because he really, with Hellboy in Hell, he was like, I don't want to draw cars. Fuck you guys. I'm gonna... Hellboy, like he did like one of the early interviews I read of him when Hellboy in Hell, he's like, this is for me now. Like you guys, like whatever. I'm just do what I want to do. Yeah. And then he's like, no, I'm done. I'm gonna paint for a year. And I'm like, dude, what a badass. Like,
yeah, seriously.
I feel a lot of people get afraid because like, oh, what does the audience want and what does the market want, which is the worst fucking thing you can do. In terms of like your writing or your art. And I just love that he really is just like, whatever. Like this is for me now. And, you know, like I said, it was always kind of for him, but really just being confident. And, I mean, look, he's amazing. I can't wait to see what he paints. I'm going to miss Hellboy, but I'd rather it end on his terms and keep going reluctantly, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so.
Last question for you. Neither of you, both of you may not do anything like this while you work, but do you listen to anything while you work? Are you guys music people while you work?
Yeah. I guess my tastes really vary depending on my mood. Like sometimes I need silence to work and focus on something without it like affecting the mood of things. But other times I flip between music and podcasts and just talking to people in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and musically, I'm all over the place right now. Right now I haven't really been listening to too much music. I've been coloring all week, and it's like one of my least favorite things to do artistically. So the only way that I've been able to get through it again is listening to episodes of How I Met Your Mother, which is also, gosh, I'm really endorsing that one.
I love it. I feel like all 5 of your answers is basically How I Met Your Mother.
You know, this is ridiculous. So I've been watching that all week. So I've already forgotten what I've listened to before that in my haze of coloring. But and then podcast-wise, I've been really getting into Undisclosed, which is the sequel or kind of like a sequel to Serial about the case for Adnan Syed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because they're getting into it so deeply that I'm seeing where like there's huge flaws in our judicial system, and like it's just really interesting to hear the legalities and like it's just cool. And besides that, I've been listening to some of who's that historian who you turned me on to?
Dan Carlin?
Yeah, Dan Carlin. I've been listening to his
Hardcore History.
Yeah, Hardcore History podcast here and there. Yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Joe?
I can't listen to lyrics or podcasts when I'm writing.
Same way.
I mean, the only exception if it's like Sigur Rós, where it's like I don't know what the fuck they're saying, so it becomes
Hopelandic.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like it's just kind of like a noise more than it's like a word. I listen to a lot of jazz music, a lot of Coltrane, a lot of Kenny Dorham, a lot of Miles Davis. I like a lot of classical music because I can't live. Then it's like Glory was largely written to Daft Punk's Tron soundtrack. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one.
So a lot of instrumental. Morricone is a big one for me. I love listening to him. But when I'm like doing notes or I'm walking around with like my dog or whatever and just like processing shit, then I can listen to lyrics or podcasts. But I definitely can't think about story when I'm listening to podcasts. Podcasts are like when I want to turn my brain off and just like process something else.
Yeah.
But like, so when I'm thinking about, Amy Mann's huge for me. She's from my favorite contemporary musician. I am why she's in the book, in the background anyway.
Right.
Gosh, I don't know. Wu-Tang Clan. Although I'm pissed, the fucking pharmaceutical guy has that fucking record. Martin Shkreli or whatever.
They did have that amazing addendum that them or Bill Murray could steal it, which is hopefully
is that really an addendum in there?
That's like a note that they had in there. Is like at any point they can make one effort to the Wu-Tang Clan and or actor Bill Murray can try to steal it back.
Oh,
that's hilarious.
I feel like that's a documentary I want to see.
Oh my god, yeah,
it's like
amazing.
Argo, but it's like with Bill Murray trying to get the Wu-Tang album back.
That is, I would totally watch the hell out of that movie. They could dramatize that and I'd be totally into it. But yeah, I love their obsession with Bill Murray, and Bill Murray's also obsession with the Wu-Tang Clan. It's one of the most amazing celebrity pairings I've ever heard of.
Well, you've seen Coffee and Cigarettes, right?
I have not actually seen Coffee and Cigarettes.
Yeah, Jarmusch, great stuff. And yeah, there's a scene with him. I think it's RZA and GZA are in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Liquid Swords, actually, I will say, is one of my favorite albums of all time. That's the one where it's like a Shogun Assassin sort of tribute album, or concept album.
I guess Wu-Tang Clan has a lot of overlapping interests with you because they got like the kung fu stuff and they got the they're big on comics too. I mean, Ghostface is Tony Stark's.
Well, I was gonna say like Ghostface album starting off with like the '60s Iron Man theme. I'm like, yeah, no, I love Wu-Tang Clan. They're amazing. I'm trying to think. There's something new I was listening to that I was like, oh, that's bad. I love David Bowie's last album. That was fucking amazing. Obviously, I've been listening to a lot of his stuff given everything that's been going on. But I have to imagine, what a badass way to go out where you're like, all right, my 69th birthday, here's an album, it's amazing. I'm going to die the next Monday after you praise me for a weekend, and then you'll discover a new planet.
Yeah.
Like days later. And I'm like, oh, man, what a genius. Smart guy. But anyway, yeah, so I'm all over the place with music stuff.
Oh, I totally feel you. And I'm totally like the words and words thing doesn't work very well for me either when you're trying to write and you're like listening to lyrics. I'm mostly a movie scores guy and like classical music when I do stuff. But
I do love podcasts though. I think it's a great.
They're garbage. I hate them.
You hate them? You're anti-podcasts?
No, I'm hosting a podcast right now. That'd be horrible if I was like, fuck podcasts.
I was going to say, like, I kind of love the self-loathing of, like, I fucking hate podcasts.
That actually describes most of my website. It's just self-loathing. It's horrible.
But no, I like Hardcore History is really good. I like Emperors of Rome. I've been listening to that a lot. I like a lot of history stuff. There's one about, like, the Italian reunification I really liked. On the media, KSRW's Left, Right, and Center treatment. A lot of NPR. I highly support NPR. I don't know. Whatever.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Guy, that's. I actually don't have any more questions for you, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking about a little bit of everything. I mean, we got dick pics and cat stuff in here, so that's pretty amazing.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel from Sketch.com. You can find this week's guests, Joe Keatinge and Leila del Duca, on the internet in a variety of places. Leila's on Twitter at Leila del Duca and on Tumblr at leiladelduca.tumblr.com. And Joe's on the web at joekeating.com. You can find their work in Shudder at Image Comics. You can find more sketch content at Sketched. That's sktchd.com. Follow us on Twitter at sketchcomic. Like us on Facebook at /sketched. And if you're listening on iTunes, give us a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.